Our gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this evening. We thank you for bringing us together to look into the matters of this city. And Lord, I just pray that you would guide and direct our discussions this evening. I pray that you would help us to do those things that are in the best interest of our city. All these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Members Olson?
Good evening.
Barentine?
Here.
Gillett?
Present.
Martinez?
Present.
Russell?
Present.
Yates?
Good evening.
And Mayor Jefferson?
Here.
7 present. All 7 present.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5, consideration of minutes of previous session. I would entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any comments or changes? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6, recognition of scheduled public comment. We do have several speakers this evening. Our first is Christine McGordy, Chair of the Budget Advisory Committee, will address council members regarding keeping current BAC members on the committee. Good evening, Mrs. McGordy.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. As the mayor just said, I'm the chair of the Citizens Budget Advisory Committee, and I'm here tonight to make a request of council. Council recently passed a rule that citizens can only serve on 2 committees. We on the Budget Advisory Committee have a committee member who's run into a little bit of issue with that restriction, and we're asking that their council consider making an exception to allow this member to stay on our committee. John Moore is a very valuable member of the committee, and the other reason that we are asking for this consideration is because the committee is scheduled to sunset in May of 2017. So it's a lot of work to get up to speed for the Budget Advisory Committee, and we want to be sensitive to people's time. And if we get a new member at this point, we feel like there could be not a good use of their time if the committee does sunset in May. So I respectfully ask council to consider making an exception to the rule to allow John Moore to stay on the Budget Advisory Committee for 1 more year.
Thank you, ma'am. Let's see if council has any questions for you. Seeing none, thank you for coming to speak. We will do a response here after the conclusion of public comment. Our next speaker is Henny Lastly of smartcolorado.org, who is present to address council regarding recreational marijuana. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor and members of your City Council, my name is Henny Lastly, and I'm one of the co-founders of an organization called Smart Colorado. Smart Colorado formed after the passage of Amendment 64 when the citizens of this state decided to legalize, commercialize, and decriminalize the possession of recreational marijuana for individuals over the age of 21. Why we did this was because when Governor Hickenlooper formed his task force, the public health and safety for Colorado kids ranked 8th out of 8 priorities when the state put together the regulatory framework around marijuana that could be sold in the commercialized market. That was unacceptable to many of us that were attending the task force meetings. And I am one of the co-founders of that group, and we have literally been in the trenches at the State House since the inception. And while we recognize the will of the voters, we did not think that meant you had to throw everything out and the baby with the bathwater at the same time. So our mission is to protect the public health and safety, as I mentioned, around Colorado youth. And the big thing around this is that our kids are so confused. Marijuana is a long word to start with, but it also encompasses many different things. And those are the things that we are most concerned about, is that there has been no education around this issue with respect to our kids. SMART does not really see an issue with products that have low THC or no THC, which is, of course, the psychoactive component of marijuana. Our issue is the high-potency marijuana products that are on the market today. And that's our big concern, and one that we think is very important that you know that many citizens, and we have thousands across the state, that share these concerns. And we also have many that also voted for Amendment 64 in our group as well, because they thought that this meant the state would be regulating and controlling. And while the state has been able to regulate the businesses, I can guarantee you and unequivocally, and many members of the industry can probably tell you, that when it comes to regulating the products themselves, that's where we really get into some very gray areas. So I just wanted to point out a couple of things. It sounded like from your study session that there's a lot of heated conversations still going on, and I appreciate all your work, because this is tough. This is really tough. I'm a former resident of the city of Englewood. I now live at the Four Corner border at Littleton, Cherry Hills, Greenwood Village, and Englewood. So I'm still a very close neighbor. I'm in the city all the time. I shop, we dine, we do a lot of things in Englewood, and we do love it as our family. I wanted to point out that over 70% of Colorado cities and counties have chosen to ban, and this did take strong leadership, even when citizens might have voted at the beginning to go ahead and support Amendment 64. I just want to point out that the rights given to the cities and counties to opt out of the recreational marketplace, the commercialized marketplace, was just as powerful in the amendment as anything else. It wasn't in smaller print, it wasn't in a different color, it wasn't in fading ink. It was just as important that people knew that they had the right to depend on their city leadership to opt out. So I just want to point that out, and it does take leadership, because everyone says, well, it was the will of the people. Well, the will of the people also said that they wanted the right to opt out, and I just want you to be aware that there are 70% of other communities that have done that. As I witnessed firsthand down at the Littleton City Council a couple of weeks ago, the council was really waiting for their citizens to stand up and say, we want this. We want recreational sales. We want commercialized recreational sales in our town. And they said it was long and very quiet, because that was not the case, because they were willing to go down that path if the citizens wanted it. And one councilwoman went so far as to even say that while Amendment 64 might have been the will of the people in 2012, she wasn't so sure that that's really anymore what the landscape looked like. So I just wanted to encourage you to continue your hard, thoughtful work around this subject. Smart Colorado really believes that the impact on our youth is one of a big concern. Kids today don't understand what marijuana means, and it's everything from low, I'm sorry, I didn't see the time thing there at all, low THC products all the way to high potency THC. So we would encourage your thoughtful continuation of work and a ban on recreational sales. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could stick around for just a second, see if council has any questions for you. Councilmember Olson.
I didn't know if you said Russell or Olson.
Olson.
Okay. Thank you for coming. If it is put on the ballot for our citizens to vote again, is your organization available to citizens to help create some kind of a campaign to help them formulate their own ideas about it and think through?
Smart Colorado would be our leadership would seriously consider helping citizens work around that, because we've worked with many other municipalities up in Denver as well as at the state level on trying to minimize the impact. We, of course, think that limiting commercialization of this product is the way to go, and also for councils to take that leadership position at the forefront before it goes back on the ballot.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Russell.
You said that the state is not regulating it. Do you think it will ever be possible for the state to regulate the potency?
There was a lot of thank you for your question. There was more discussion this session than ever before on the question of potency, and the reason is, again, we're now beginning to see the data that's available, and the state put out an equivalency report last summer that showed that the average THC concentrate potency was 62.1%. And Flowers and Buds now has a potency average of 17.1%. That's a far cry from the potency levels from even as the 1990s. Again, just all the advances in agriculture and grows, it's become a much more powerful drug. And SMART has really put that tough question, especially down at the state legislature.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Yates.
When you made the comment about limiting commercialization, what do you mean by that?
We believe that, thank you for your question, we believe that commercialization means shops, and that means access, and that means normalization that a product is safe if it's being sold in a store. And that's the messaging that is seen by our kids. And all you have to do is drive up and down Broadway in Denver, and the number of shops that start just north of the city here, kids count them. They see a green cross. They expect that means it's healthy, it's organic, and we now know that's not the case. And just as a comment, I spent a lot of time with Denver City Council as they looked at pulling back some of their commercialization. They will be absolutely thrilled if Inglewood would take on some of this. I can guarantee you, because then Denver wouldn't be the first stop that would open up the corridor on I-25 between here and Pueblo. It would now be Inglewood. And I think that's a really strong consideration for your city to consider. You'd be the first stop.
So are you saying ban it outright, or are you saying just make it heavily regulated within our community?
We strongly would say limit the commercialization and ban recreational marijuana. We understand that you have medical already in your community. There's some controls to that, but in terms of recreational, it would be the first stop on the I-25 corridor. And Denver, again, is now beginning to feel the pressure of oversaturation of this marketplace.
So when it comes to the concentration levels, is there anything at the community levels that may address that issue?
The
THC levels, because it does concern me. It is extremely potent.
Yeah, and thanks again for pointing that out. Unfortunately, we have not seen a municipality that's been able to limit the potency of the products that are available for sale. Because when the voters approved marijuana in the constitutional amendment, it was silent on that. You could buy 1 ounce of concentrated marijuana, which was basically the equivalent of 2,800 10-milligram servings, which could go into an edible product.
Wow.
Yeah, but we're running an ad right now in social media that says that's enough to get an entire high school high. So the social consequences are powerful, and some that sometimes we really hope that municipalities will look at.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to our next speaker is Kathleen Bailey, Inglewood resident. We'll address council regarding recreational marijuana. Good evening, Ms. Bailey.
Good evening. What she said was excellent, and I'm just going to put my simple words to the same thing. I'm here to ask the City Council to uphold the ban. I'm unclear why that's so complicated with what I witnessed earlier in this evening. And I hope you're listening, Joe.
Yes, ma'am.
I present the following 5 points of concern if the ban were to be lifted. First, personally, as I've said every meeting, it is a moral issue. How many of our social rules and mores are we willing to compromise to increase city revenues when much of our fiscal woes are the result of poor city management and development projects that cost the city and demand for increased city services with little or no added tax revenue to support the added cost of services? Listening to the communication amongst you guys, I'm not surprised this has occurred, and I'm sorry to be angry, but that you guys are frustrating. How would you defend our actions to benefit from the sale of this gateway drug to the students, children, and athletes to whom we taught, warned, and declared marijuana to be a gateway drug, and a drug that continues to be held in felony status at the federal level. What are we teaching them about being responsible adults or responsible city? Do we simply tell them that we adults got ourselves in a fiscal mess and this gateway drug that currently holds felony status at the federal level, which we could apparently ignore now that the state has done its thing, will be a source of easy money for our budget shortfalls? Second, the current projected tax revenues identified by the industry reps at the 3 meetings were ranged between $200,000 and $700,000. As I said then, a drop in the bucket for a city with a current budget of $44 million. And there was no clear understanding of what the actual revenues would actually be, or how many pot shops and pot buyers would be required to achieve or even increase that figure. Third, many of the cities around us have banned the sale of marijuana, and I'm so glad that the person before me brought this so eloquently to your attention. If Englewood lifts its ban, it will become one of a few go-to cities for marijuana users to purchase their drug of choice. Some of those marijuana product shoppers will be driving to, through, and back out of our city dangerously impaired. Now, I said some, not all. And though police departments continue to seek better sobriety testing for those driving under the influence of marijuana, it continues to be more difficult as compared to testing alcohol levels to accurately identify and charge the dangerous THC impaired drivers and get them arrested, jailed, and off the streets. Fourth, if we want to attract business to our city, how many businesses would balk at setting up business next to a recreational pot shop? Would City Council be okay with recreational marijuana shops filling the now empty available retail space in front of the Civic Center? Or would City Council make sure that they only approve location sites that are not near where you work or live? Fifth, the only guaranteed winner in lifting the ban is the marijuana industry. Recreational users can still get their drug of choice just a short distance away in the city of Denver without lifting the ban. I am asking City Council to simply again say no and permanently ban the sale of recreational marijuana in the city of Englewood, Colorado. I don't understand why you would even consider making it more complicated by, gee, should we put a ban on what we already have, which was already approved and in our city, plus a ban on rec, plus a ban on grows. Maintain the status quo, and if you're going to allow the citizens to put forth a ballot, stay the heck out of it. You guys will mess it up. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. If you could stick around for just a moment, see if council has any questions for you. Seeing none, thank you.
Excellent.
Appreciate it. Next speaker is Elaine Holtz, Englewood resident, will address council regarding recreational marijuana. Good evening, Elaine.
Elaine Holtz from 3333 South Lincoln Street, number 706, Englewood 80113. I attended one of these meetings that was supposed to be strictly for the constituents in order to express what they wanted to say concerning recreational marijuana. I've spoken several times on this issue. I lost a grandson to alcohol and marijuana. Yes, the stuff is much more potent. And I have seen that there's only a 2% recovery of what we had years ago, because I was in Florida in the 90s. I've been here since then. And that's when I worked for a rehab facility. And it was a lighter quality of marijuana than you're getting now. And 2% was the total amount of recovery because it is an intro drug. It begins the slide down the hill. But I want to say this. After my visit on last week at this particular discussion, I want to say, in my opinion, a meeting held for our citizens, the taxpayers who support this community and all the services that are required. And this was held on their behalf to express their feelings of what they want in this city, whether or not they want recreational marijuana. And by the way, it is a yes or no. I was very unhappy to see and also found out from other sources that the lobbyists on behalf of this, who happen to be the owners of the medical marijuana, which I voted for, only because I know it's a better alternative for a person dying in pain than the other pharmacy products that are out there. I've had experience of this firsthand. However, I don't feel it was their position to be present. We all know what their stand is. They want to be able to expand to recreational marijuana. So we know what their opinion is. And I don't think they have the authority to be there. We know what they stand, just like some of the people that in the city stand. But this was for the citizens to express freely where they stood. And although I made a comment, and I hope it was gracious, at least I heard it was, they were rude enough and brazen enough to remain present and to take on people who were talking and giving their experiences, like me and several others, who had had firsthand experience with this drug, and it is a drug. They took them on. I don't think it's their position. Number one, they need to read a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, because if you want someone on your side, you certainly don't take the adversary position. So I really feel that there are some council members, perhaps, who have joined forces with them. See, I happen to feel that if you represent the citizens of this community who have elected you, who are responsible to see to it that these businesses are provided the same services that anybody else who lives here needs, and they're fitting the bill, and you who are elected by these people who are fitting the bill, that you need not be personally involved with any opposition. You're supposed to be neutral. You're supposed to do what your constituents want you to do and not be influenced by any other thing outside of that. That, to me, is a conflict of interest. And people who sit on city council who continue to do this are not going to be sitting there the next time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me see if council has any questions for you. Seeing none, appreciate your comments. Moving on to our next speaker, Doug Cohn, Inglewood resident, will address council regarding historic preservation. Good evening, Mr. Cohn.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Doug Cohn, 3051 South Marion Street. I'm not going to talk about marijuana.
Breath of fresh
Need
air.
a little bit of a break. You all have been talking in your discussions about the comprehensive plan and what to do with historic preservation. And I'm representing the Historic Society tonight. Historic preservation should be understood and addressed at a local level and integrated into our planning and decision-making process. And now would be the perfect time to do that. Adding historic preservation to our draft comprehensive plan will assist in balancing new development while respecting our existing community. We need to do a survey of Inglewood's buildings and districts to explain their character and importance and establish meaningful parameters for stability and growth. A strong local preservation program can increase property values, it can attract people to our businesses, and it can promote community sense of heritage and identity. Inglewood has had a preservation ordinance since 2005. The Historic Society would like that law to be activated and a preservation commission to be established. To help you understand how this program might work, the Historic Society is organizing a town hall meeting. We have invited Inglewood preservation consultant Diane Ray Tomaso to moderate a 2-hour talk with Dennis Swain, who's the senior planner in the city of Littleton, and Mark Rodman, the manager of the Colorado Certified Local Governments Program for History Colorado, the State Historic Society. Mr. Rodman will talk about and explain the Certified Local Government Program and discuss how Inglewood might be able to join 120 other towns around the state and benefit from the preservation planning grants and the training programs. Dennis Swain will talk about how the CLG program has worked in the city of Littleton. They've been working with it for quite a while, and they understand how it works. The Historic Society Board would like to invite the whole community to join us in learning about the Certified Local Government Program and get answers to our questions. Like, how would we create a preservation board? Who would be on it, and how would they be chosen? What would it do? What would be its authority and its responsibility? How would it integrate in with our current planning process? What about private property rights? How much does it cost? As soon as we finalize the date and the time, we'll send out invitations to you all and to the city staff and broadly across the city. I guess my last question is, can we use one of our, what do you call the things, opportunities to use either Hampden Hall or the community room for holding this town hall meeting? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hold on just a moment. Let's see if council has some questions for you. Mayor Pro Tem Gillett.
Mr. Cohn, I do not have a question, but I have a comment. I want to thank you and the Historical Society for being part of the Veterans gathering. So
wasn't that a marvelous celebration?
It was, I don't know if anybody got to go, but I just wanted to make sure that while you both were here, I wanted to thank you for all your hard work and getting that done. Please
thank you.
Pass along to Mr. Crabtree that he's done.
I will do that, and to Kay Howard, the lady who's worked for 4 years to get it put together.
Councilmember Yates.
Doug, thank you for all your hard work and everything. It'll be an interesting conversation, I'm sure. My question would be not so much for you, but for council and staff. Since they are talking about something that is potentially a part of the comp plan, is there any space anywhere where they could hold their meeting?
Yeah, I think we'd have to check our calendars and find out when Hampden Hall, availability for Hampden Hall. As you know, the Inglewood Arts now runs that, but we do have the ability to get space in there from time to time as it permits, as well as the community room. So I have to get that specific date and check with our scheduler for the community room.
Okay, and I can communicate with you,
Perfect.
Manager Keck. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll send you an email. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Olson.
Thank you, Doug, for coming. Could you see this event as being something that's more of a collaborative with council rather than just the Historic Society? Would you like it to be like that, or would you rather have it be separate and just have us come? And it doesn't matter to me either way. But
I think it would be great to have it as a collaboration with council.
That's what I was thinking that this fits with the kind of goal thinking, and we've got to do some studying and conversing about it, and this might just be something we should plan together if we're going to put this on our goals and actually try and accomplish something and create a date that works for everybody.
Okay.
I don't know. The rest would have to agree with that, so maybe that's the question to council.
Now, you guys are kind of busy. I've seen your schedules, and you work 6 days a week, 20 hours a day.
Councilmember Valentine.
Well, I will find out what days we have available with the three different people and communicate that to Manager Keck, and we'll see if we can find a calendar spot.
Yeah, it's not going to be decided now. And you know that the cultural arts that the Inglewood, we've made an agreement
Museum
with
of
them
Arts,
with Hampton
yeah.
Hall, and so the best thing to do it's not going to be decided right now. You're going to
Oh,
have
I know,
to discuss
right.
it with them.
Anyway, thank you for your time.
And thank you very much for allowing me to join. I'm sure once you do get a date, now that I paid my membership, I'll get the date, right?
I will send you a personal letter.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Our next scheduled speaker is Patricia Ross, Inglewood resident. Will address council regarding regulatory issues on marijuana. Dr. Ross, welcome back.
Hello. Yes, I am Dr. Patricia Ross. I live at 3361 West Monmouth Avenue in Inglewood. I am 5 blocks away from the most contentious facility that you all discussed this evening, the one on Bellevue, Bellwood, and Federal. We can go in and on and on. I was at all 3 of the meetings that were held last week. You can certainly ask me of my opinion, my observations of them. I will say that this is a highly contentious issue, and what I was going to say tonight got changed based on what happened in the study session. So I'm going to speak a little extemporaneously here. So first, I completely support taking this to a vote. How do we say this? I'm not even going to pay attention to the vote, the advisory vote. I agree with Councilmember Barentine that it was illegal. It was not set up as part of Amendment 64, and we have to pay attention to that. That was the amendment that was voted upon. However, 4 years ago, when we did vote on Amendment 64, that's eons ago in this marijuana conversation. As Councilmember Martinez pointed out, so much has changed. We've learned so much about this issue, and people, I have been told, feel duped, hoodwinked, all sorts of things about this. So let's take it back to the people. However, I have a question about the kind of waffling of, well, let's take it back and maybe have it with, this distance or that distance or whatnot. Why? If the will of the people say, yes, we want recreational marijuana, then can't council after the fact say, okay, we're going to put in, maybe I don't know regulations, maybe I don't know how this works, but it seems to me that would be the time for council to address, should it be 2,000 feet from a residential or a school, because you guys didn't discuss schools. That's a huge deal. Or other treatment facilities, that's in Amendment 64 as well. They're important things to say, but you know what? We need to find out what Inglewood voters think, because as a representative republic, the voice of the minority does count, and we do need to be able to say, again, from a voting stance, yes, I agree with what you said, Councilmember Olson. If we want to get out and let people know what these issues are, and it was highly contentious at these meetings, of why we think recreational marijuana should not be here in Inglewood. Of course, I do not support any recreational. I don't support any marijuana in this city. I don't want to be the first stop on the I-25 corridor. I don't want my daughter, who lives 5 blocks away from from this medical facility that would go recreational, if according to your plan, that she has to deal with all these outsiders coming in when we're going down to King Soopers to go get our groceries. Or as she gets older, if she wants to go down on her bike to go get something like that, I don't feel safe with that. There's so many issues involved with this. Now, I am going to address this idea that it's easy to just take the medical facilities and change them to recreational. What? Hello? My neighborhood would be up in arms with that. We were told when this was approved for medical that, oh no, recreation would be a completely separate issue. So to do something because it's easy is not good governance. And I think that's really important to remember. You don't do it because it's easy. You do it because you are representing us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Let's see if we have any questions for you. We do. Councilmember Martinez.
Ms. Ross, thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts tonight. I really appreciate it. So just to clarify, you would prefer if we put it back on the ballot that the language be very simple, like do you want recreational marijuana, yes or no?
I think that would be the best. You know why? Because to have these qualifiers makes it very confusing again. And I think unless there is some ordinance that says otherwise, the council should then be able to say, these are the restrictions. There's restrictions that are set up already in Amendment 64. There are other issues that can be resolved through council after it's passed. Why do you have to have these confusing restrictions on it? I don't get it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. I was just wondering if you wanted it just stripped down, bare bones, recreational, retail, yes or no? And
yeah, because I think that that's really what the citizens need to voice their opinion about. Not if I wanted 1,000 feet. Maybe there are some people who have that kind of, wishy-washy kind of, well, maybe not. But
I think part of why we even discussed it as a group is because of the impact on homeowners, like in your neighborhood.
Sure. And believe me, I know Consuela. She's not happy. I don't like the fact that she was going to sell her house, and when the woman found out that it was right up against a marijuana facility, she said no.
Right.
Yes, and as the industry will tell you, yes, there was a survey that's done. How our house values have increased, but we're not talking about whether or not things came true or not. What we're talking about is what's really good for our community. And yes, I can give you all sorts of statistics, as you know, and I can give you studies, as you know, about why it's not okay. But again, let's go back to the people, because 4 years ago was a long time. So yes, I think keep it simple.
Thank you.
What else?
Thank you, ma'am. That's it. Moving on to recognition of unscheduled public comment. We do have a full list here. Our first speaker of the evening is Emmett Reinstoffer. Did I brutalize your name? Emmett?
That's all right, Mayor. It's Reinstoffer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. First, I just want to say thank you for being part of the discussion on the marijuana consumption establishment that has opened in Inglewood. I believe it's been open for about a year now. And as some of you know, I've worked on addressing that and working with them and the city to look at what the possible paths are for that establishment. I really don't want to get into whether or not marijuana is good or bad. I think there is a spectrum of opinions and information out there that we've all been through enough times. But really today, I just came here to say, thank you for being part of that conversation. Thank you for letting me be part of that conversation. I know you have a first reading tonight of a resolution to basically just say no to these consumption establishments. And I'm not sure if that would allow for the current club to stay open or not, but I wanted to be a voice at least to just speak from my experience and let you know that club was very diligent with me as I approached them with questions. I participated in one of your study sessions and a few ad hoc committee hearings. I actually invited the club to come and talk to the Liquor and Marijuana Licensing Authority. I was really amazed with how much effort they put forward to cooperate. Now, I understand there may have been an issue with this establishment when they first opened. Some folks have said they were not open about the nature of their business, and I'll leave that between the city and them. I just know from my experience, they showed me how their entire security system worked, how their odor control system worked, all facets of the business, and they even took actions to address concerns that have come up. So I know this has been an incredible learning process through the entire experience. I believe iBake Inglewood is at its 1-year anniversary. What I've learned from this experience is that I do think it's incumbent on the state. We need state lawmakers to grab the bull by the horns and address this issue. We need regulations from the top down. I understand the city doesn't want to be the first one out of the gate to take a risk with a new type of business establishment. But at the same time, I think it would be the fair and just thing for Inglewood to give iBake at least a grandfathered clause for 1 more year and to even open it up to full oversight from police and fire. And let's continue learning about this and address real public safety issues. I know marijuana consumption is going on a regular basis in my neighborhood in Inglewood, and I know a lot of Inglewood residents utilize this facility. So I just think if you give them a year and work with them, I think there's still more to learn. And if they're not explicitly violating the law, I don't understand why we would just shut down a business on our main street in Inglewood. So let's just try to work together rather than just going in an extreme direction of banning this. I think the appropriate thing would be to find a middle ground where we address all concerns. I tried to do that in the ordinance that we worked on over the past several months, so I just hope you'll all consider me for questions on that and continue the conversation. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Let me see if we have any questions from council for you. Councilmember Barentine.
I appreciate your service on the Liquor Marijuana Board. I appreciate that you come with some industry understanding. I think I actually encouraged you to go on there so that there was some of that intelligence along, intelligence and other information. I don't mean that the rest of the members aren't intelligent. You're all intelligent. But you come with a different background, different understanding, and some different experience. And I thought that that would be a good idea for that board. And it was part of that experience, that industry knowledge, that level of expertise, that I heard when you came to that study session that there were problems with this. When you came and talked about their system, whether they were having it on or not, whether they were using some of the things, the security things that they had shown you, you actually seemed somewhat skeptical, actually, to convince me that maybe this wasn't the best idea. I mean, the concern from the community that it was already kind of the way it was handled. But actually, if I misunderstood something in your presentation, because it was actually the things that you said at that study session that made me have more concerns about them and made me decide that maybe this wasn't the best way to do this. Maybe we should have the rules in place first and not grandfather anybody in when we've got the kind of concerns that you and Alex Wenzel, I believe the chair of this board, brought up. If I've misunderstood anything, then I give you an opportunity to clear it up.
I would just like to say I appreciate your kind words, and thanks for the feedback. And I absolutely have concerns. And in the conversations I've been having with state lawmakers and other cities about this, at the end of the day, I know there's this issue of marijuana consumption. We've legalized marijuana, but we don't have places for folks to go to do it. So to address that issue, I don't think private clubs are the perfect answer. I think they could create some more problems, and I wanted to present those and be fair all around. At the end of the day, I would really encourage you, ask the police department, ask the fire department, have they responded to any major issues? Has this establishment really created public safety risks or hazards? And that's where I just want to be fair and say, I really don't think they have, and I don't think there's a massive outcry of neighbors that are upset. I think there's been a few complaints, and I think they've worked really hard to address them. And all the concerns I still have today, I do think could be addressed within the next year. And I would hope that if you did give them another year and worked with them, state lawmakers would also address this within the next year and maybe hold them to a higher standard, and we would expect that as well.
Well, again, thank you for your service, but your concern on that was exactly why I thought it would be best to start over. So I don't know whether you've kind of changed your mind or not, but again, and congratulations on the purchase of your home. I'm sorry you'll be leaving Inglewood, but thank you very much for your time and for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next speaker, Bruce Carter Jr., also speaking about marijuana. Is Mr. Carter here? Seeing no one moving forward, I'll move on to the next speaker, which is Ed Bartel, also speaking about marijuana. Mr. Bartel. Moving on to the next speaker, Guillermo Alavarde, also speaking about marijuana. Moving right along, Dan Chrissy, also speaking about marijuana. I think a lot of these folks have left the room. Mr. James Street is the next speaker. Seeing no one moving forward, I'll move on to the next speaker. Mara Poser from Tri-County Health regarding marijuana consumption clubs. Good evening.
Good Good evening. My name is Mara Perzer. I'm with Tri-County Health Department. We are the local public health agency serving Arapahoe County, and thus the city of Englewood. Several months ago, when the city of Englewood was considering a ordinance to allow marijuana consumption clubs, we submitted comments expressing some of our concerns in our opposition to private marijuana consumption clubs. And we are thankful now to see that tonight the council is considering an ordinance to ban those clubs, and we would just like to say that Tri-County Health Department now supports this ordinance to ban marijuana consumption clubs due to several public health and safety concerns that we have shared previously with the council.
Thank you, ma'am. See if council members have any questions for you. Seeing none, I appreciate you coming down tonight.
Could the other person with you at least identify themselves?
Sorry, yes.
I'm Amy Winterfeld. I'm also with the Tri-County Health Department, and I was just here to be a resource. Were there any other questions or concerns?
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Seeing no questions, I'll thank you both again for being here.
Just one clarification. So are you saying that Tri-County Health is officially coming out as an organization and banning it? You're speaking on behalf of them?
Yes, Tri-County Health Department opposes private marijuana consumption clubs.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Moving on to our next speaker is Ida Mae Nickel, also speaking about marijuana. Good evening, Mrs. Nickel.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson and council. I have two questions that I would like to ask the council. Will the recreational marijuana business infringe on the citizens' constitutional right when they are intimidated by the recreational marijuana customers and users? That's been happening a lot. It's happened to me. And I was greatly intimidated. I had wanted to call the police, but I was afraid because I was intimidated. So I wonder how the council will address those kind of problems, especially with the elder or if you're a widow. The second question is, will the recreational marijuana business infringe on the citizens' constitutional right when they are limited by the that's what I just said, sorry. Will the recreational marijuana business limit the flexibility of our local businesses in our community and infringe on their constitutional right? Meaning, many folks may not want to shop next to a marijuana shop. They might just move on to other areas of shopping rather than in Englewood. Perhaps some of the cities who do not, that have banned the marijuana. I am opposed to recreational marijuana, and I feel it will continue to change and erode our city on moral issues and change our children forever into believing everything is permissible to do and no harm will come to them. Many are saying the marijuana is coming and we can't stop it. So let's just take the money that will help our city. So if your child was standing on a rooftop and was going to jump, just because everybody else was doing it, would you say that's okay to jump? It's the opinion of a lot of marijuana folks that the meetings that I went to was it's coming. We can't stop it. There isn't anything we can do to stop it. And I believe we can stop it, either with the ban or letting the folks vote. I particularly am concerned about the voting issue because how will this marijuana lobby, how much money will they put into this vote that will scam the folks into really not voting their true feelings? So that's another consideration about the marijuana lobby. I think our city is very unique, and we need to stand on our beliefs and our morals, and let's not be swayed with the sound of money that's going to come to our city. I had a second page that I was going to speak about, but I'm not speaking now because the folks that I was going to speak about have left. And so you council have that, and so you can read what I had to say about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Please stick around and see if we have any questions for you. Any questions from council? Seeing none, thank you, ma'am. Moving on to our next speaker, which is David Nickel. Also speaking about marijuana. Good evening, Mr. Nickel.
Thank you very much. I'd like to first just read a few items from some research and also some presentations that I've done in the past. Marijuana issues. After alcohol, marijuana is the second most frequently detected substance amongst drivers in traffic arrests and vehicular fatalities. It poses a more serious threat to the physical and mental well-being of teenagers than ever before. Problems related to marijuana use: memory problems, paranoia and anxiety, reaction time issues, loss of motivation, greater risk of cancer, immune system is weakened, increased risk of depression, increased risk of psychotic symptoms, significant cognitive decline. A study published by Dr. Madeline Mayer of Duke University has found that early adolescent cannabis use is associated with significant cognitive impairment in adulthood. Subjects that had a significant drop in IQ, and the longer the subject smoked weed, the more severe the impairment. Marijuana has a neurotoxic effect to which the adolescent brain is particularly vulnerable. I'm going to highlight some things from the legalization of marijuana in Colorado, the impact, a document by the Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. In 2014, when retail marijuana businesses began operating, there was a 32% increase in marijuana-related traffic deaths in just 1 year. Colorado marijuana-related traffic deaths increased 92% from 2010 to 2014. During the same time period, all traffic deaths only increased 8%. Drug-related suspensions and expulsions increased 40% from school years 2008 through 2014. The vast majority were for marijuana violations. In 2014, when retail marijuana businesses began operating, there was a 29% increase in the number of marijuana-related emergency room visits in 1 year. In 2014, when retail marijuana businesses began operating, there was a 38% increase in the number of marijuana-related hospitalizations in only 1 year. I'm just relating those facts to you to just give you some information that is very important. I've worked as a teacher and a coach for 30 years. I was a student assistance coordinator who did a program for interventions for kids that were getting busted in the school systems for marijuana. The usage statistics and the amount of violations that occurred during the period of time when medical marijuana came on the scene, and then we moved into the retail thing, have skyrocketed. There are so many things that happen in regards to this, and I'm focusing on the youth, because what happens is anytime you create more access, you create more access for more kids to get marijuana. It happens. It's a reality. And so I would definitely encourage you to put a ban on it altogether. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. See if we have any questions for you. Councilmember Olson.
Thank you for coming, and we have some of the information that you have as well. So if we don't put it on the ballot, and we have others that put it on the ballot to be voted on, what are the options then for you as a citizen? And what would you suggest for us in the light of knowing that some are going to probably put it on the ballot to be voted on as a yes?
If you as a council were going to do it, I would say a full ban. If you're going to let folks do it, then let them come as they would. My vote would be a complete ban, because I've seen the detrimental effects on the youth of our country because of it.
So you'd rather have us put it back on again as a ban, which is what we've never put it on. We have a ban already that council determined we would do, and we're challenged with the idea of that probably something is going to come forward, and should we preempt it and create what we think might be a more livable compromise and let people decide whether or not they want to do that or not?
I definitely would not suggest that you have a compromising position. Number one, you're creating, if you're putting on something with modified this and that, it creates, number one, a question mark in the minds of the people. What are we really voting on?
So would you prefer just a yes and no?
Right.
Okay. Thank you. That helps.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to our next speaker is Peggy Lapp, also speaking about marijuana. Mrs. Lapp.
Good evening, Council. Peggy Lapp, 5034 South Grove Street, Inglewood. City Council members and those helping to work out this issue, I thank you for your efforts. You know my face, you know my situation, and you know the reason why I'm here. I'm glad that you're taking the time to listen to the citizens of our city. Not everyone who is speaking lives in our city. It would seem that you've received a pretty clear message, however, judging by the responses at these meetings, town halls, by email, and in general conversation, that the majority of us do not want marijuana here, retail sales specifically. While other cities, mostly small towns we don't compare with, have chosen to allow the retail sales, we have a moratorium on it, and for good reason. The entire state of Colorado is struggling in many different ways with the legalization. We don't know yet the full effects, yet to be seen, for our neighborhood, our cities, our kids. Lots of people tonight have spoken about some very important things that I think have brought to light some statistics. Not always, you can't always go with statistics, but there's some good studies that have been made, things that support our discussion tonight. The honest truth, though, which I believe you all know, is that the residents of Englewood who live here, pay taxes here, hold jobs and own businesses, raise families and retire here, are not interested in this social experiment. The people who left this meeting tonight and did not choose to speak, do they live here? Do they pay taxes here? Do they have jobs here? I don't know. They left. I wanted to hear what they had to say. We're under no obligation to help the businesses who want to sell marijuana. No obligation whatsoever. We are obliged, however, to do what the citizens of Englewood want. And right now, that is to ban retail and possibly the medical marijuana. Those who are for it to sell retail are purely in it for the money. I have no other idea what they might want. It's not to do the good things in my neighborhood. They're not going to be good community people. Many residents of Englewood who voted in favor of Amendment 64 are now reversing their opinions, and I think you've heard that many times. We've had an incredible amount of people moving to Colorado. The impact on our homeless population is increasing, and we have higher rent and property costs. And there's a hidden issue of drug testing. Are people coming here able to pass the drug test to get a good job and then in turn end up homeless? The pro-marijuana side says that they just want to do this. That's the only reason that they have. I don't see any benefit for any of this. The money is not actually going to be there. Many people who are in favor of it don't really realize that the added taxes don't really go to schools or parks or to the police department. Misinformation has caused a great divide between the for and the against. But it will be apparent when the city's citizens of Englewood will have the chance to cast their vote again. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Hold on just a second. Let's see if I have any questions from City Council for you. Seeing none, I appreciate you coming down again. Moving on to our next speaker, Tim Brown, also here to speak about marijuana.
Council, hello.
Good evening, Mr. Brown.
My name is Tim Brown, Trees Dispensary. I know I only have 3 minutes, so I want to address a few things that I heard said tonight. Smart Colorado, they're a respectable organization. One thing that she mentioned was that 70% of the municipalities and counties around Colorado ban this. Well, I can tell you out of those 70%, almost none had 64.5% in favor of Amendment 64. I've also heard the opposition say, hey, we should listen to the people. Well, the people voted 3 times in favor of marijuana, and while I applaud City Council that they have finally come to the point where they're going to listen to the city again, I think it is despicable that you are going to spend more tax dollars on a question that has already been answered. I can tell you from the industry, I know folks don't like it, but yes, of course we're trying to make money, but we also pay taxes. No one's hiding the fact that Walmart tries to make money or Home Depot tries to make money. It's ridiculous. Of course we're trying to make money. We're not trying to hide. We're also not trying to intimidate elderly folks in our community. We don't support that. What we support is sensible regulations. We support Englewood making the money off of a problem that is already here. Recreational marijuana is in your city. It's been here since 2012. We're not talking about legalizing marijuana. We're not talking about whether you can smoke it in your house or grow plants in your basement or do all of these things. We're talking about responsibly regulating an industry and a product that is already in your city, and those folks on the opposition are right. They are going to go to Denver. That's all they're going to do. That's the only thing you're going to change with this ban. Those folks are going to be shopping in Denver instead of Englewood. You're not regulating the social, effects on our youth by saying no to collecting tax dollars on something that you already have to deal with. That is in Inglewood already. You get no benefit in all of the problems. I don't understand why we're even here talking about it, because of the fact that folks have voted on it 3 times. So I want to finish because it's turning yellow, but I do want to say, I've listened to you guys say we're going to pass, you might put an initiative on yourselves. And while we commend you, we think that's awesome, we want the voters to speak. We feel like they've already spoke, but the vocal minority is not the silent majority. The silent majority might not come out and speak at a city council meeting, but they will vote. And I am confident that they will vote in our favor. The one thing I can tell you is, as being a business here, we're not going to be able to sit idly by while you put a simple yes or no question on the ballot that might drive us out of business. We won't be able to do it. We will have to put a competing initiative forward that ensures the viability of our businesses, because that's what businesses do. They try to stay alive, they try to make money, and they try to meet payroll every week, which is what we'll do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Brown, if I could get you to stick around for a couple questions from council, I'd appreciate it. Councilmember Russell.
Mr. Brown, if you're not into intimidating people, then why, at the 3rd meeting, when one of your people called a person an old woman, that it wasn't any of your people that confronted that person?
Okay, so I would like to address that, because that 100% was not my person. Some folks smoke marijuana and support this, and some folks don't, but that doesn't mean that those are my people. So that's insulting.
I didn't ask you whether it was your people that said it or not. I asked why you didn't say.
It is ridiculous to imply that that gentleman that was disrespectful to that woman had anything to do with me, because I would have never done that, Second of all, if you were there, you should have paid attention, because I asked that same gentleman to sit down, and I told him he wasn't helping us at all. So if you were there, then you would have noticed that we don't like anyone to be disrespectful. That goes when I'm talking, that goes when someone from the opposition is talking. So that person is in no way representative of me or the industry as a whole in Inglewood, and it's insultive for you to bring that up.
Any further questions for Mr. Brown? Councilmember Rolson.
Thank you for coming. Would you prefer, you heard the discussion tonight, that we put something on that's simple, a yes or no, or would you prefer for us to put a ban on, or would you, we're going to probably put something on. What would you, from your side, what would be useful in terms of a compromise and a way to work with this?
Okay, so.
I know you're saying 3 times we voted. No, I mean, yes, but some didn't.
That's fine. No, that's fair. What I can tell you is that the council and the administration in the city of Inglewood zoned medical marijuana, right? It has some of the most restrictive setbacks in the state of Colorado for anyone that allows it, okay?
And some people are mad at us for even that.
That's right. But our business came in and abided by every law that city council put in place. We did not zone it. We did not put the setbacks in place. And yes, Mrs. Russell, we didn't have to start a marijuana business, but if we wanted to, we had very limited options on where we were going to go, right? That was the only location that was viable in the entire city of Inglewood. The entire city. So the building was acquired, the business was started. Folks came out, they opposed it, right? They said, we don't want you here, we don't want you next to our home. We heard it loud and clear. We're not bad guys. Contrary to popular belief, we don't want people to hate us. It's not in our best, it's not in our best interest as a business. If you're a pizza shop, you don't want folks to hate you. So what we did is we went to the city on 3 occasions and asked for permission to move. On 3 occasions, we secured a lease away from the residential. We went out of our way. We were walking away from $200,000 because we didn't want to be standing here having to explain how we're bordering this home. While at the beginning, we followed every single rule that the city had. We're the only one in town that did, by the way, and we just get berated for it. So then we go, hey, listen, let us move. We don't want to offend this woman. We don't want these people to be upset. We want to move, and we couldn't. We tried 3 separate times. We negotiated a lease. We tried our hardest. We went to the city on multiple occasions, and guess what? City council passed an ordinance that wouldn't allow us to move. So now you sit here and you say you're going to put a yes or no question on the ballot. Well, why would I trust you? Because you did something one time where you asked the folks, should you ban it? They said no, you didn't pass it. Amendment 64 was 64.5%. You zoned it, you regulated it, you put us in a very specific location, right? city council comes, they're upset we're there. Then when we try to move, we can't. I mean, it's the twilight zone. It's literally the twilight zone. You don't even know what to do. And so while I appreciate the yes or no question, I appreciate the fact that you've come this far, I don't have the faith that we will be able to work on something sensible. While I do believe we could work together to put something forward, even move away from residential, which would cost the company that I work for probably upwards of $900,000. But we would still be willing to entertain that question. We just wouldn't be willing to say yes or no, and it's a yes. All of a sudden now there's a 150-foot residential setback, and we're out of business either way. So for us, while we're happy that you would put it on, if you put it on in a way that doesn't allow us to stay open, even if the folks vote again in favor of recreational marijuana, what would
your
we do?
vote, you would hope that we just do a yes, no, and work it out.
No, we would hope that you would be very specific. That way the folks that oppose it and the folks that are for it know exactly what they're going to end up with.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Barentine. Still more questions for you, Mr. Brown.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Barentine.
As was pointed out earlier, and I think rightfully so, it's not really 3 votes on it. People voted for Amendment 64, and in Amendment 64, we have the right. They voted equally with legalizing marijuana for recreational use. They voted equally with that they would leave it to their municipalities to go ahead and regulate that. That's what they voted for also, and that is what we are doing. I am not against, I totally understand that nothing that we put on one way or the other is going to satisfy your issue, and you're probably going to want to put that on. You get the signatures, and it doesn't matter whether it costs the city money or not. It is the right of both the citizens and a lobbying group or an industry to get the signatures, and it's their constitutional right under our charter. Go ahead, and you can get something on the ballot. And if there's an opposition to that, they have the right to do that too. And we have an obligation in this community, as we have done citizen initiatives before, to foot the bill for that, which is actually quite minimal to do that. I don't know if something could be worked out both for the citizen side and for your side to go ahead and say, we'll save you both the time of getting signatures, of getting your message out, of going ahead and having any support, and having the obligation of getting signatures in, and we'll just put a bunch of initiatives on one way or the other. I don't know whether they'd be good enough in the end with what we would do or not. So I understand your frustration in it, but...
I apologize for interrupting, but do you have a question? We are in a question portion.
Well, I'm the only one being asked that too, so sometimes I understand your frustration on that as well. You brought up the issue of the money, and I wanted to make sure that we clarified that, and also about the vote, because I think that was addressed before. I don't believe that you've been rude to us, and I'm sorry if you feel you've been colored inappropriately, but it is a contentious issue.
I'll always try to be polite. So
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for coming and speaking this evening.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on to Mr. Bruce Carter, also speaking about marijuana. Mr. Carter.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor. Very contentious. I got to say very much so. Everyone really has a dog in a fight. A lot of people. It's a very emotional subject. I too was very interested to see what the general public for Englewood would have to say. So I attended 2 meetings to listen to what these folks had to say, and it was pretty much what the outcome was I was expecting. It was a sounding board for people that have issues. It wasn't a true sampling of what Englewood, the population of Englewood, wants. What do we have? Over 31,000 that live in Englewood right now? And you're going to base your findings on 175 people? I think you might want to take another look at it, because it's not a true sampling of how people feel about the issue. Marijuana is here to stay. Englewood has an opportunity to make some money. There's nothing we can do to make marijuana go away, okay? It was illegal to begin with, okay? And people were buying it in dark alleys and in very dangerous situations. So what do people say? It's being used, let's make it legal. So we did that. Amendment 64 accomplished that, okay? So now what are we saying? Are we able to do anything to where both sides are able to work this out, where Englewood could definitely benefit from the revenues? Look at your fire department. Look at the situations you have. You want to sell this fine building because you can't afford to stay here? This is ridiculous. You need the money. But that being said, you're not getting a true sampling, and I think that if it does go to a vote, I think it'll pass. And, we want to work with Englewood. We've been in Englewood for 6 years now. We've paid our taxes. We've done everything that's been asked of us. You brought up the smell. I invite you to go to my store now, walk around it wherever you want. We have cutting-edge technology that we developed to make the smell go away. It's not there anymore. We're 95% done. We still have another 5%. There is no odor there whatsoever. There was an issue with the glass. They said, scrape the glass. What do? We scrape the glass. We're doing everything that we can to work with you folks, okay? We're trying to do everything. We understand that there's issues. People are addicted. There are alcoholics out there. I've had friends I had to do intervention with. It's life. They talk about kids. Kids shouldn't be able to make a choice on whether they want to smoke marijuana or not. We're talking about 21-year-olds that are asked to go fight for our country and die for our country, but yet we won't let them have a choice between alcohol or marijuana. Listen, don't kid yourselves. It's here. It's not going away. And Englewood should grab the bull by the horns and take advantage of some revenues and make it work for the city, for the community, and for the
Carter,
majority of the
if I could get you to wrap
voters.
up your comments, I appreciate
Okay, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you,
I
sir.
appreciate your time. I really do, and your consideration.
Any questions for Mr. Carter? Councilmember Olson?
Because I really have not met with any owners, could you disclose which shop you're related to or what?
Nature's
business?
Kiss.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Carter.
Thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Colleen Dickerson, speaking about iBake and marijuana. Good evening, Ms. Dickerson.
Good evening. I live at 2835 South Pennsylvania, and I've been in Englewood, well, I've been in Colorado for over 20 years, and I've been in Englewood for 18. I was going to change my comments based upon what I heard, but a lot of people have covered the issues, and I did submit emails to all of you with great detail about my opinion on the issues and the legalities involved. So I'm just going to try to summarize. The main reason I have heard for lifting the ban on retail cannabis is revenue. There are far greater considerations: what the character of Englewood as a city and what do we want it to be? What values do we want to hold and protect and project? How can the city mitigate or prevent the obvious negatives associated with these kinds of businesses? The DOJ in 2013 has announced that state laws allowing cannabis usage would not be federally challenged because it is assuming very strict regulations and restrictions. To underscore the lack of restrictions and regulations on cannabis usage and sales, the actions of the non-resident owners of iBake should result in immediate revocation of their license and the business owners never allowed to do business in Englewood again. They advertise on their webpage, "Come smoke weed with us." In the focus groups, they bragged about how they provide a safe place for people to smoke recreationally, and that the city attorney told them this was absolutely legal and permitted under their license, which was merely a head shop, besides a number of other lies they spouted about cannabis. They promote public consumption at their business and are in violation of Amendment 64 and other laws about public consumption, and their clients have left the business intoxicated, causing at a minimum annoyance as well as exposing others to the reek of cannabis and allergic triggers for many. They are guilty of maintaining a public nuisance and incitement to violate existing law. Some have reported these intoxicated people exposing body parts and windows of nearby businesses to the disgust of diners, not to mention the DUI danger when they get in their cars to leave. This is the kind of thing that happens when drugs are given even a millimeter of tacit approval. on the specious basis of tax revenue. Revenue is not worth the social, legal, and physical costs. Go ahead and submit a 15% tax on cannabis-related businesses on the table requirements, just in case. But take your time making very strict regulations and restrictions on any cannabis business in your codes. However, there is no reason to allow or license any such business, regardless of code or speculative revenue. Allowing any cannabis business is fraught with peril for the character and values of the citizenry, and also for the organic growth in the city, and could price most small businesses out of the city due to exorbitant rents and unsustainable increased property values and taxes on commercial property. I have a number of suggestions, but I would like just a few extra seconds to thank the Deputy Police Commissioner for his actions. I brought to him a problem in my neighborhood, and the next day there was an officer there, and they caught a person with many pounds of meth and other things. And I'd also like to thank the city manager, Mr. Heck, for doing the focus groups, but I would like to point out that Rita Russell's question to Mr. Brown was not answered. He did tell the one guy that was so insulting to sit down that he was not helping, but then the guy got up and spoke again, and that's when he attacked one of
Ma'am, can I get you
previous
to wrap up
speakers.
your comments? I apologize. We only allow 3 minutes for unscheduled comment. I appreciate that. Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Dickerson? Seeing none, I appreciate you coming down. Thank you again. I'll move on to response to public comment. Councilmember Rolson.
Thank you for everybody who's come. I wanted to respond to the first set that came up in terms of the Budget Advisory Committee that Christine McCrory spoke to. I would like to ask that we reconsider, given the nature of that committee and the short-term amount of time that we're allowing them to continue, that we continue to have John Moore on that committee. I think wisdom it comes when you know there are some times where you need to make an exception, and this is one of them. So that's one thing I'd like to ask council to consider. And then on the second part of all those who presented around marijuana, I know Manager Keck, we gave you a tall order, or maybe Acting Attorney, we gave you a really tall order in the study session. And what I would like to suggest is that one of 2 or 3 options is a very simple statement of yes or no, and that might be one of the considerations that we make. Otherwise, that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Rolson. Councilmember Barentine.
I did want to address what the Budget Advisory Committee came up, and it has come up with the Planning and Zoning Board, with the Inglewood Urban Renewal Authority, and we do not make, I do not think it is appropriate for us to make policies based on an individual's need or expertise. He sits currently on 3 boards. He chose the 2 he wanted to be on. He's on a quasi-judicial board, and we made the decision that in order to open it up more to citizens so that they could participate, that we don't have a concentration of just a few people sitting on 3 and 4 boards. So he chose. He did not choose to be on the Budget Advisory Committee, and I would, having just come off of an election and walking around this whole town, the whole thing, including my district and a little outside with some other people, and we have some amazing, intelligent, awesome people in this community. Not just District 3. Most of them are in District 3, but outside of District 3, there's some too. So I think that we really need to reach out and make sure that we're giving people those opportunities. When you start making policies based off of individual people, you get into a slippery slope of saying this person's good enough to make an exception for, and this person is not. And I think it's inappropriate. To the Smart Colorado people and Ms. Bailey, I appreciate the and Item 8, the additional information you brought up. It is true that Amendment 64, as I mentioned to him, was done with the equal understanding that people would legalize marijuana and then have control locally over it and what happened to it. And that's all we're trying to exercise here and figure out what we're going to end up doing. I'm a little confused on the 3-vote thing with that because of that. And of course, we would always spend money to put anybody's citizen initiative. I've done several citizen initiatives and would expect that it's worth the city's time and effort to go ahead and make sure the citizens are heard if they can get the support to go ahead and put something on the ballot. About 6 weeks ago, I met with a lobbyist. And quite honestly, the reason that a lot of the citizens are coming forward now is because the industry did bring up that they wanted to do a citizen initiative, and then all of a sudden the citizens realized, well, we can do one too. So this whole back and forth was kind of created by some of that issue. But I would like to give credit where credit's due, Mr. Carter. And I know that you're angry, and I know that you're frustrated with what's going on. But nonetheless, you are in District 3. And I do not have the frustration from me. I represent that area where you do business. And about 6 weeks ago, when I met with your representative, your local lobbyist, I brought up the issues that had been brought to me on your business, and that was signage, loitering, lighting, smell, and security. That's what I brought up. And he had mentioned about some good neighbor policy and about doing things, and it took a little bit of time, but I will give you credit that when I went to go pick up a pizza for a thing we were doing, I was amazed when I went back there, and that window that kind of had that car lot feel to it, when you're a medical thing that's been kind of a bone of contention, was taken off. I appreciate that. I walked to that area before because of the complaints that had been given to me, and I walked it after just about last week, and I wasn't sure whether it was because it was during the day or not, and I was like, you're taking care of it, and I will give you credit where credit is due. Regardless of where I stand on this issue in representing District 3, I appreciate that the effort is being made to acknowledge the concerns and problems that the people in that residence have had, and that instead of being frustrated and going, it's legal, get over it attitude, that you're a good business owner and you're trying to start addressing these things. I wish it had been done sooner, but I also wish I was 25 years old and 5'8", so better now than never. And so I'm glad that we're starting to come to that. Regardless of how this issue comes out, I get the feel from you that we will be able to work together and try and make sure that we have that going on, and I do appreciate that. And that's all that you're welcome. I understand your frustration, but I will give you credit that we are not at odds, that you have been willing to reach out and talk to me. And I have not always been easy with you. I have been harsh on some of the issues because the citizens have not been happy, but they're recognizing what you're doing too. And Doug, thank you very much again for your comments and for, again, for the veterans thing. You guys did an amazing job with all of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Yates.
I'd like to thank everybody that came and spoke. I appreciate the input. First thing I'd like to put out there in regards to the marijuana issue, my mind is not made up. And the ban, if we were to ban it, the ban is only good until the next election. And then at that point in time, the question is up again. So, you know, it's not a simple ban it and it's solved. It just raises its head again, potentially in another few months. I did hear very loud and clear that if we were to do an initiative, that it's a simple yes or no. And there is some benefits to just simply saying, yes, we allow the recreational, or no, we do not. It does give us the ability to take the time and do some thought on how the regulation may go. And it would also give us the ability to negotiate with the gentleman that has his facility over off of Federal. He's expressed the desire to move. He's expressed that he would move if the city would cooperate with him and allow some changes to where he could move. Currently, the way the code's read, he has no choice. And one of my biggest goals is to help that community over there and get his shop away from the neighborhood and get it in a more appropriate spot. You know, the comments have been made that medical or marijuana, you know, should be sold here in Englewood, and that it's the will of the people, and, you know, so on and so on. It's legal currently, yes. It's easy to get in Englewood, yes, and we don't have recreational marijuana in Englewood. You can go a short distance and you have it. It's only a minor, and I emphasize a minor inconvenience to get a hold of recreational marijuana. So the argument that we have to have it in Englewood to serve the people, I don't buy it. The other comment that was made that if we do legalize it, recreational, that we would be the first stop on I-25. I did a quick web search. Right at the intersection of I-25 and Hamden to the east, 4 blocks is places where people can buy. So we would not become the closest spot to I-25, although I hear very loudly and very clearly that the concern is really not so much the location, is that they just do not want it in their community. This discussion has to be talked about by the people. And I'm recommending to the people, if you do not want it in the community, you rally behind the folks who are wanting to do the initiative to ban it. You support them, you get out there, you knock on doors. You may not have money to do this, but you do have time, you do have the legs, you do have the energy. The marijuana guys, they've got more money than you do, but I don't think they have the numbers that you do. So it is truly a time for the people to stand up and make it very clear, and it needs to be done in a very formal situation. Council's responsibility, is the way I see it, is that if it becomes legal, we have to be able to manage it. We cannot just say, well, you know, the people said yes and everything goes. I appreciate everybody coming in and talking to us. It's one of the most difficult decisions I'm sure I'm going to have to make over the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I, too, would like to comment regarding the Budget Advisory Committee issue. I would like to speak also in support of an exemption, not necessarily for the individual member, but for this body, Budget Advisory Committee, given that, you know, there is a sunset provision for them next year, you know, and assuming that they're in some sort of evaluation process in front of this council, that, you know, bringing in a new member and then evaluation after just 1 year might not be as fair as having a more seasoned member there pushing them forward. Because again, with the sunset provision, I just would support an exemption for the Budget Advisory Committee on that. So perhaps we can get some more comment on that under Councilmember Choice. I also wanted to thank everybody who came and talked about marijuana, both pro and con. I understand that this is a emotional issue. It's important to many of us in the community. And again, I guess I just want to reiterate my position on this. It's not that I'm pro-marijuana. I'm pro-voter intent. We voted on this issue 3 years ago. It sounds like we're going to go back to the ballot this year, which is just fine by me because I am resting well assured that the intent of the voters will be honored this time around. I did view it as the responsibility of the previous council as well as this council to honor that voter intent from 3 years ago. But again, hearing that we're heading towards a ballot initiative on this issue, probably several of them, you know, I will be able to sleep well at night knowing that we will be getting to honoring that voter intent soon. And I do appreciate City Manager Keck, you know, for starting sort of that public discourse that I think will be helpful as we head into this November election cycle. You know, I think that we'll have to think a little bit more at our next session about what the exact language is, and perhaps simple versus more detailed may have to have some additional consideration. The only thing, not just on this issue, I did want to speak a little bit about was the idea of vilifying our local businesses and vilifying the profit motive here in Englewood. Every local businesses that's following the local rules is a partner of the city of Englewood. Over 60% of our revenue for our general fund, and that's basic, police, fire, all the great services that we provide to our community are paid for from our local businesses. And so I guess I just want to, say that, again, our local business really is our partner, and I know that this is a divisive and emotional issue, and hopefully we can come to a resolution after November and move forward as one community together under a new policy. And that's all I had. Thank you so much again for everyone who came and spoke. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item. That is number 8, communications, proclamations, and appointments. Seeing none this evening, we'll move on to agenda item 9, consent agenda items. Nothing in the consent agenda, so nothing also under item 10 of public hearing items. So we'll move on to item 11, ordinances, resolutions, and motions. We do have several. Under A1, we've got Council Bill 21. Staff recommends council approve a bill for an ordinance making changes to the Englewood Municipal Code banning marijuana consumption clubs. Our staff source is Acting City Attorney Dugan Comer. Mr. Comer.
You like me to?
Wherever you want, sir.
Okay.
His preference is changing. Look at that.
Well, he's interviewing.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Council members, good evening.
Move the mic up.
Sorry. This is an ordinance that we discussed probably about 4 weeks ago at a study session regarding banning marijuana consumption clubs. We do have we have one club in the city, and we are going to discuss that issue in June 20th. And we have a moratorium on any new clubs, so we needed to, which expires in July, so we needed to take care of this today. So, any questions?
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Comer? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this issue? After the public comments that we've received, I am supportive of this ban. While I do think that there may be some state issue with legalizing marijuana and not allowing some folks to or not allowing sort of public places for people to consume, I don't view that as Englewood's problem. And I do feel like it brings some of the negative issues without providing a lot of positive benefits. So, I certainly don't want Englewood to be the home for all of these type of businesses moving forward, and that's why I'm supporting this ban. Please vote. Seeing no further comments, please vote.
All votes be cast. Record shows 7 ayes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Moving on to 11A2, Council Bill 22, the City Manager Office recommends council approve a bill for an ordinance amending Title VI, Chapter 2, Section 5, Subsection E of the Englewood Municipal Code to reflect that non-permitted hours of construction work be 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Our staff source is Assistant City Manager Murphy Robinson. Mr. Robinson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you is an ordinance that describes the changes that the Code Advisory Committee has researched on your behalf as you asked them a few study sessions ago, several study sessions ago, for them to research these construction hours, and their formal presentation and recommendation to you as provided in the ordinance is to change the hours to 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. The ordinance is included, and I will entertain any questions that you have.
Questions for Mr. Robinson? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? Mayor Pro Tem Gillett?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Code Enforcement Advisory Committee had great conversation on this issue and wanted to make sure. And Mr. Robinson, the only question I should have asked you, was there a Sunday exclusion on this?
I believe that, sir, the final for construction hours were just the 7 p to 7 a. I don't remember that we did a final recommendation of a Sunday exclusion.
Okay, thank you. I just know that there was discussion at that meeting, and Ms. Russell may remember that, about some time on. But I'm good to support it the way it is as well. It's better than what we have.
Agreed. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I also will be supporting this, bringing back those hours. So as we've seen, additional construction won't be bothering as many people in the neighborhood. I think 7 to 7 makes a ton of sense. That's what I would have recommended as well. So I will be supporting this as well. Seeing no further comments, please vote.
All votes be cast. The record shows 7 ayes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 11C1, the Parks and Rec and Library Department recommends City Council approve by motion the South Broadway Medians Landscaping Project to Grandview Landscaping Irrigation Corporation for $74,347. Our staff source is Open Space Manager David Lee. Mr. Lee.
Good evening, Mayor Jefferson, members of council. There's a recommendation from the Parks, Recreation, and Library Department to approve by motion the South Broadway Medians Landscaping Project to Grandview Landscape Irrigation Corporation. The work includes the removal of existing landscaping in 4 median planters and installation of new landscaping plants, decorative mulch, topsoil, while protecting the existing irrigation system. The work includes traffic control while construction is taking place. And the estimated time for completion of the project is the end of July 29th, 2016. Bids were received from 4 contractors on May 5th, 2016, with Grandview being the low bidder of $74,347. Funding for the project is budgeted in the 2016 Public Improvement Fund. I also wanted to cover the areas in question. They're on Broadway between Bates and Cornell, and then Cornell and Dartmouth to the north, and then south of Hampton between Lehigh and Mansfield, and the second set down there is between Mansfield and Nassau. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for Mr. Lee? I do have one. Have we used Grandview Landscaping Corporation before?
We have not used them before. I did some background checks on them with the City of Golden, with the City of Arvada, and South Suburban Park District, and they came highly regarded.
Excellent. Thank you for doing that. I guess just wanted to express my concern to you about their choice of plants in the past. We've seen some changes to the medians, and the plant life didn't survive, and that was really unfortunate. We've also seen some disruption, I think, of irrigation as well as electrical surrounding some of the median accesses. And so, I don't know if we have somebody on site to help supervise. And I guess some of these probably don't have electrical, do they?
They do not.
Okay. But I know that was an issue at 2700, our gateway, so.
That's since been repaired.
Yep, I understand that. Thank you for that. Any other questions for Mr. Lee? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion or comments? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes be cast. The record shows 7 ayes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to 11C2, the utility staff recommends approval by motion of the proposal for the Allen Water Filtration Plant residuals removal and disposal to Secure On-Site Services USA, LLC, in the amount of $230,555. The Inglewood Water and Sewer Board, at their May 10, 2016 meeting, recommended council approval. Our staff source is Utilities Director Tom Brennan. Mr. Brennan.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm before you this evening to recommend approval by motion of the disposal of the Allen Water Treatment Plant, Allen Residuals Removal Disposal to Secure On-Site Services USA. These residuals are a byproduct of our water treatment process. They are considered technically enhanced, naturally occurring radioactive material, and as such, they have additional requirements by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Secure On-Site Services USA meets all of these requirements. Do you have any questions for me at this time?
Any questions for Mr. Brennan? Councilmember Russell.
So why was the material not removed annually, like the original plan said? In the packet here, there's a letter from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and we were actually, I don't know what the right term is. We weren't fined, but it was supposed to be removed, and it's under the findings on the last page.
It's a compliance advisory.
Okay.
To give you some background, prior to 2012, the state allowed 3 landfills to accept our residuals. In 2012, they decided against that. And we're still under draft guidance on Allen residuals. From 2012 to 2014, we worked with the state and a consultant, as well as the landfills, to try to find a resolution to this. In 2014, we still had not gotten anywhere. So we decided in 14 to haul 12, it'd be 11 and 12s off, because there's a year lag on it. In 2014, the landfills took the fight over and submitted January 1st of 2015 to the state. We were told a 6 to 9 month review period, so we had thought we would wait to see. To this date, there is not a resolution, so we are approximately 6 months behind.
So will we continue to be 6 months behind, or?
No. The way the process works, 2015, when it is brought in, it's 25% solids, 75% water. We have 2 drying beds. So 2015's dryings are on site right now. They will be moved to the front bed. 2016's will be put, as they're processed, which we will begin fairly soon, will be put on the back bed. The 2015 residuals will be hauled later this year. And there is, to let you clarify, if you look at some of the dates, some of them are fall and some roll into winter. It depends on how long it takes to get approval. Since it is draft guidance, it's a very complicated issue. We sample it and submit it to the state. Once the landfill gets our bid, they have to also sample it and submit to the state for approval. And that tends to make it slide a little. So that's why we're about 6 months out. But actually, since 2012, we have been not hauling on a routine basis. We're hoping for some resolution to it.
Okay, thank you. And just one other question. Is the on-site bed on the parking lot, or the sludge that was on the parking lot that was covered, is that part of this that we're removing now?
Yes. What you're referring to the parking lot? Yes. That is the final drying. Like I said, it's 25% solids. After a year of draining, we move it to the front, and we still leave it uncovered for drying. Once it becomes damp, we cover it until disposal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barentine?
All of this material on site there not being covered and not being disposed of has been a huge issue that it's been there. And I guess one of the biggest issues is that it wasn't being covered as per state law. And I noticed that it's covered now. Is it covered now?
Yes.
Okay. When she asked before about removing it, what you've submitted here is that you had something February 19th of 2008. And your next paragraph says that you had some removal in 2010. And then it says you had some in 2014. There's a whole lot of years in there that's not being accounted for. And then there's money attached with each one of these to go ahead and do some removal. So everything doesn't seem to necessarily add up to what you did with the money that was appropriated every year for the removal of this and the years that it wasn't removed? What happened to that money?
First of all, that was my oversight. When that was put together, we picked the closest ones we could find from previous council communications.
The closest one you could find was 2008, from February
Yes.
19,
Well,
2008?
I recognize that, and I have a printout in front of me right now of all the year's expenditures, and I can give you
Okay.
the rundown if you'd like.
What the expenditures, what I would like when you submit something, is that the expenditures match up with when they were spent for the what they were intended to be spent for. I've got 2008 with some money attached to it. I got 2010 with some money attached to it, and 2014 with money attached to it. And then a bunch of years that apparently nothing was done, to where you've got this built up, technically hazardous material that has been left there, and now you're asking for more money to go ahead and move it, and I don't seem to have a good, clear timeline of what you've been doing with the money and whether the stuff has been being removed.
Okay, that's a fair question. I have a timeline right here.
I would appreciate if it was in the stuff that we were being given, not anecdotally while you're at the podium, because we're going back with something that I have from the community claiming that it is a carcinogen in our community, not being properly handled, not being properly disposed of, and now you're coming with a plan to try to dispose of it and ask for money, and this doesn't make sense with what you've provided here, and this is going back to 2008, so I'm concerned about the plan that you've put forward and the money that you're asking for here.
Yes.
Do you have a specific question, Councilmember Barrington?
He seems to get my question.
I didn't hear a question in there.
He seems to get the
I understand her. That is why we had the inspection in March of 2016.
Mhm.
That's why I included it in the packet. We're in compliance, and that was in your packet. But now,
But the question that you brought up was that we weren't in compliance, that we weren't fined, but that we weren't.
advisory, we're 6 months behind. I'm sorry, yes, there is a little confusion in the documentation. I do have the years and expenditures in front of me.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councilmember Barrington?
I would appreciate if all the information in a cohesive manner, so that decisions, if you're asking us to make a decision, that we could make a decision with correct information.
Yes.
And I accept your apology.
Understood.
Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Brennan this time? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you. Further comment? Seeing none, please vote.
Votes to be cast. Let the record show 7 minutes.
Thank you.
Moving on to general discussion, Councilmember's choice. Anybody want to volunteer to kick us off on member choice this evening? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Gillett.
I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and for both sides, obviously being available. I think there's still a few of you left that presented. And I personally would love to see, if we're going to go to a ballot question, that the question would be, should the city of Inglewood continue its ban on retail marijuana? We do have a ban on it now. I think the question should be, should we continue that ban? That way the voters know that there is a ban on it already. And if we're going to make it that simple, let's make sure that they know where we're at now so that we can continue that without assuming that it's been anything other than banned. I heard someone say that there was something else. We don't have a moratorium on retail marijuana, which is previous council voted to not have retail. So I hope that if we do go to a vote, that would be the question. Mr. Lee, thank you for being here and presenting tonight. And I see you have the Pearl director next to you. There was a Trump stump grinder in Bellevue Park, and apparently the stump grinder never removed the mounds of stuff. And I'm concerned about some public safety. If you would, I saw your folks mow around it the other day, and I was just wondering if somebody's ever going to put those, where they get the stump, they just left it all there. And I was glad to see you tonight. So I'm sure that somebody from your department will go make sure that there's no public safety issue. We have 4th of July coming up, and we have individuals that may not, may have had a survey or two. So we just want to make sure that they're safe. So.
Dave, can you come up to the...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make it.
You are correct. The contractor does not remove the grindings. They leave them. So it's up to our park staff to remove them, and then we will backfill that area with soil.
I was just, okay, so I'm assuming that was on the schedule already.
It is on the schedule. We're a few people short right now. We're in the process of hiring more full-timers, and so we hope to get back ahead of all of our work.
Thank you so very much. I didn't mean to.
You're very welcome. There's no problem.
I just want to make sure we're all okay. To continue on with the discussion, I know that a newspaper recently interviewed me and asked me if I felt that we were obligated to ensure that Inglewood had a retail marijuana store. And my comment, and I didn't see it published, and maybe he will, maybe he won't, is that we are no obligation as a city to have any type of retail. I love shopping at Albertsons. We're an Albertsons family. I have to drive all the way to Centennial to go to Albertsons, and I told him, I said, well, I think the city should put one right there on Broadway for me, so I don't have to drive so far. But that's just not how life is. The city has no obligation to make things convenient for others, unless it's for public safety or hospital staff or police or fire. Then we want to make sure we have them. But otherwise, for some reason, they think that we have this obligation as elected officials to ensure that people have this service. That's where I stand on that. So if you see that quote in there, that is true. I did say that. But I want to thank the city manager for having the meetings. I know that was difficult, and I appreciate your time on that. Again, Doug, thank you for the Memorial Day. I don't know when you guys quit, but I think I left about between 3:30 and 3:45, and it was still going good. And I apologize that I had to leave. That I had to, if you saw me walk out, it's not because I was dissatisfied, but I had a 4 o'clock appointment and I needed to get to. So I want to thank you guys so much. And again, I love the community getting involved in their community. Next week we have over, 26, 28 interviews for folks coming forward. I love John Moore. I think he does a great job. But I want to agree with Ms. Barentine on that. Is we have great citizens in our city who can serve on these boards, and when we have one person on multiple boards that other citizens could get on, and again, nothing against John, he serves on the water board as well and does a great job, but we have other citizens that I believe can do a great job as well. So I hope that we continue with opening up more opportunities for citizens versus eliminating them. So I just thought I'd chime in on that.
Thank you for that. Thank you, sir. Anything else, sir?
No, sir.
Appreciate it. Councilmember Martinez?
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming tonight and sharing your thoughts on the marijuana topic particularly, and thank you to the city manager and the city staff for holding those public meetings. I was able to attend one of the meetings, and it was really helpful to get some insight into kind of more of the constituent concerns, so thank you for that. Looking forward to resolving this, and I would be happy if it's back on the ballot and we get it resolved one way or the other fairly quickly here. A couple other things. I am looking forward to the board and commission interviews, like council member to my left here just mentioned. Yes, I know you're so really excited about that. We do have a lot of really enthusiastic, passionate community members, and I think it's a really great opportunity to meet them and find groups that they would be very beneficial to. Two other things. This past Saturday, the Art Selection Committee for the River Run Art Selection Group met, and they will be talking about the piece of art that's going to go into the River Run trailhead. And then the Pearl director was also at that meeting, and she mentioned something exciting, that there's already 350 kids signed up for the summer reading program. So that's something exciting I wanted to share. And that's all for me.
Thank you. Councilmember Yates.
I'd like to thank the Historical Society for the memorial event. It was quite an event, and it was kind of nice afterwards talking to some of these old vets, telling me their stories from merchant marines on over to having to fight some of the tough battles. Those types of events should be a regular thing here in our community. I think it's important that the people are able to see what others have done in order to ensure our freedoms. Thank you very much for that. The meetings on the discussions on the marijuana issue, I have to say that was probably one of the better things that we've done as council, has got the people out there. They were able to voice their opinions. It allowed people to start talking about this instead of just having it come up to the vote in the fall and people being broadsided, not really knowing what's going on. So thank you very much, Mr. Keck and staff, for conducting those. A lot of folks did tell me that they really appreciated that. The next thing is a river run. If you haven't been down there, you should at least go down there and take a look. It's really cool. I think that surfing function, once it gets up and running, is going to be busy all the time. I don't think I'll be using it, but there's a lot of folks that will be more than happy to do it. So, and that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Olson?
Again, appreciate people coming out tonight. I would like to weigh again in on, and I agree with the mayor on the BAC. It's not about John Moore. It's about having someone serve out the rest of this short term that we've given them to finalize the work of the Budget Advisory Committee. It does not make sense to bring someone on for just a few months, in my mind. I think we could sunset. If it continues beyond 2017, then I would say let's institute what we have in this committee, but I think it's kind of silly right now not to have this group that's been working very hard together, but I realize I'm in the minority on this. The Historic Society, I just want to make sure that I would love to see us, we didn't talk about this, but I'd love to see us do some kind of an event that would be in joint capacity of thinking about just historical issues around the city and get going on that. The River Run, I would love to see us, and I don't know if we have time to do this, but this summer it'd be fun to spend maybe half of a study session going and visiting it so everybody sees what the progress has been. I know we're doing that with the South Platte Working Group in June, or maybe July, June. So I think it'd be a fun way to check that out. The last thing is that there is a Arapahoe County Open Space Celebration. I think we all got an email for that. Is it June 20? It's a Friday, the last Friday of the month, maybe? Thursday. Yeah, it's Friday? Yeah, is it? Yeah. So, I've gone every year for the last 3 or 4 years. It's really fun. It's very early in the morning, I realize, but it's a very fun event and to celebrate the funding that we all get in all the different municipalities. And some of us come away with a plant, which I managed to kill in the course of a year, but Eric is still alive in your office, right? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Barentine?
Again, Doug, Ida May, thank you very much for all the work that you did for the Veterans event. I was so happy to see Matt Crabtree representing you guys as your president. He did an amazing job with the presentation that he did to former Inglewood Superintendent, current Littleton Superintendent Brian Ewart, and the memorial out there was very nice, but it was a very nice event. I really enjoyed it. It was well attended. I attended a meeting. Randall O'Toole from the Cato Institute is a senior fellow with them and a former professor at Yale. And I had taken to this meeting on high density and the problems with that, tax increment financing, urban renewal, and the use of taxpayer dollars to subsidize development. And because we're going to be dealing with some of those issues. And I had taken some information from the Urban Land Institute that had been given to City Council on the myths of high density, and was very grateful to Mr. O'Toole that he took those and gave some feedback on that. So anybody who would like those, his take on their supposed myth fact on high density and sometimes, in my opinion, somewhat flip answers on some of that. So if anybody's interested in looking at some of the other side of that, sort of try and get a little broader idea of some of this that's coming through. And I just came off an election, and they have been talking about marijuana. People have been talking about marijuana and the vote and the issues that were going on back in November. Councilmember Russell and I had a town hall meeting, and I hope that that stays again in that purview so that council members are going out and talking to their constituents. Certainly had an opportunity in running for office. It doesn't stop. I mean, you can go and ask people what's going on, and it just seems overwhelming, the problems that people are having with the idea of retail going in. I appreciate that the city attempted at that, but there was some misunderstanding from some people that they felt that that was maybe a pro side from the city part, and we have to be kind of careful about that. But I would encourage all of the council members to continue to do town halls so that people know that it's not putting the purview, the onus on the city and making it look like they have any dog in the fight or agenda going on, and that the elected representatives do their job and represent the people that elected them. That's all I had.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Russell?
Yes, I would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and also I do appreciate the great turnout at the town hall focus meetings that Mr. Keck held on behalf of council. I think by the third day, I was kind of done with it. I don't know how I don't know how staff deals with it, but it's not. I want to hear from you, and the truth is, I have been having monthly town hall meetings, and I have been hearing about this really for probably the last 4 months. So I just want to thank you for coming out tonight. There was a great turnout, and it's great to hear from all of you about what's going on. I also want to thank the Historic Preservation Society for the Veterans event. I was not able to be here, but I did hear about it. My husband is usually reserved, but he was very appreciative and thought it was a wonderful event. So thank you for all the work that you did to put that on. And I, too, along with Councilmember Olson, think it would be good to do something joint with Council and the Historic Preservation Society about the comp plan. I appreciate that. And just thank you all for coming.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to Mayor's Choice, I also wanted to just echo some of the thoughts about the Memorial Day event. I thought that was one of the best events I've attended in the city of Inglewood, candidly, and the amount of civic and national pride in the room was just off the charts, and thank you so much for bringing that event to the city of Inglewood. I particularly enjoyed the boot sort of display in the lobby there that highlighted the local vets from the city of Inglewood who paid the ultimate price to defend our country. Just wanted to really briefly share with you, I met a gentleman, Mr. Spalding, who served in the Second World War and lost 2 of his brothers in the Second World War, and his son was one of the highlight vets in the lobby there, Richard Lee Spalding, his son, who went to Inglewood High. The whole family still lives here, and he said to me that the Spalding boys paid their dues, and I certainly agree with that, and want to try to pay respect to all the great vets we have in our community. So thank you again for that wonderful, wonderful event. Going back to the Budget Advisory Committee, is it clear that we want to stick with the current policy on that? Do other members feel like they need to weigh in on that issue at all, on the Budget Advisory issue? Go ahead, Rita.
On that, I do think it's not about any one person. I do think it is about policy, and I met some incredible people, and I don't know if they have applied for the Budget Advisory Committee, but there are certified public accountants out there that would love to serve the city. So I think that we need to stick with the policy.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I appreciate that comment. Any others want to weigh in on the BAC issue? Thank you for that. The only, I think, feedback I would add, perhaps, Mr. Keck, as we put it out there, is that we should try to highlight that policy for applicants, just to make sure that we're not wasting anybody's time there in that regard. So, if you wouldn't mind looking into that, I'd appreciate that. Also, I'm ready to take a field trip to River Run to watch Steve surf as well. Moving on to, I am going to call for a special meeting for the purpose of entering into an executive session with Strategic Government Resources to discuss candidates for the city attorney position on Tuesday, June 14th at 6 p.m. So that is next Tuesday. We'll have a special meeting to head into an exec session. Secondly, I also wanted to talk to you guys about how we wanted to handle our city's representation on specifically the DRCOG board as well as the Metro Mayor's Caucus. I represent our city in those capacities, and this year they are asking for some support of a few statewide ballot initiatives. I did include some stuff in this week's packet just to highlight them very briefly. 69, let's see, is the single-payer healthcare issue. They're wanting a no vote. There does seem to be a lot of momentum around a no on the Metro Mayor's Caucus. Then second one is Initiative 98 and Initiative 140 that are kind of going together to open primary elections, and I guess to open primary elections is a good way to say it. That one, I'm not sure it's going to have an action by either body, but it has been presented. And then finally, Measure 117, which is basically debrucing the state of Colorado for a 10-year sunset period to keep additional revenues earmarked for education and transportation. And I guess I'm just, I think from what I can tell, there's a lot of different policies in different cities about do they bring it back and get a consensus from council? Does the mayor sort of make that decision? And so I guess I just wanted to take the council's temperature on what's our pleasure here on this. If you have specific, how we'd like to handle it from a policy perspective, like should I be bringing these back to council for recommendation from council when I'm voting on these issues with these bodies? Or do you want me to, not bring these issues forward? I'm interested in hearing feedback, and if you have a specific position on any of these, I'd love to hear it. Councilmember Olson?
So can you tell me exactly what happens with each of these? If you vote yes or no, then there's a letter that goes forward in support? Is that what they're asking for?
Correct.
Okay,
and
so
I did look into the Metro Mayors. It's kind of a super majority, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a single
member. How do
member.
they define a supermajority?
I think it's 5 votes, if I'm not mistaken, because there's 40-some-odd members, I believe. And I believe somewhere around 5 is kind of where they cut off. Their ultimate goal is always sort of unanimous support for these type of things. They don't really want to get involved in something that's 50-50 kind of a split. And so they look for either unanimous or ultra majority.
And so no decision, no votes have been taken on this yet?
No, we delayed. Yes, we delayed. Yeah, DRCOG is going to take a vote on this at their next meeting. Metro Mayors is doing an email poll on it currently. And I've seen a lot of them come in. They're very supportive. Most of the mayors seem to be very supportive of anti-69.
Anti-69.
No on 69. Yes.
Yeah, no on 69, and then, yeah.
And then the primary one, I'm not really sure. And then the push on DRCOG is supportive of 117 to keep that extra money for transportation and education.
Yeah, I would love to weigh in on these and give you some of our perspective. These are big ones, I think.
Yeah, these are pretty big ones.
So I don't mind doing it. I don't know if this is the time to do it tonight or if you need to have these quickly.
Yeah, relatively quickly. We didn't meet last week, so unfortunately I feel like this is probably my last meeting to be able to get some direction from you guys on this.
How do you want the feedback if the decision is to give you feedback?
Let's decide on that first. Do we want to be involved as a council on all these type of issues? Councilmember Barentine, you're in line to speak. You can comment on that.
If you ask me what color grass I want in my front of my house, I'm going to give you an answer. So if you bring up these individual, very contentious issues that are being dealt with, I'm going to have an opinion on each one of them. Whether you're going to do this by consensus every single time to take it there, I'm not sure that that's really a worthwhile endeavor. I talked to a couple of former mayors, one from down the road there and one from Aurora, and they did have a policy that they had to have a unanimous decision. They have both at times not given their consent, and yet the group moved forward somehow. So I guess if a letter's going to get written or that they've got an agenda anyway going on, I don't know how much sway the mayor's caucus has in what they're doing, but I'm not sure that it's going to be worth our time to have a debate on every one of the state issues that are going forward. I mean, I have very serious opinions on the issues that you've brought forward, but I'm not sure how we're going to do that as a body to debate the state issues and what you should take back to the mayor's caucus that might not matter anyway.
You can see why I'm conflicted when they ask me to press a yes or no button on these issues, and so I'm like, wait a second, how should I be dealing with these issues? And so your preference is not to discuss each of these issues or discuss these issues?
I have an opinion if you want to waste your time getting an opinion on every single state issue that we don't have that. I made you mayor. I'm going to maybe have to, as much as it will burn me, let go of a little control and let you make those decisions because I'm not sure that it has how much sway it has or whether it's really valuable use of our time to debate every one of these kind of issues.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Councilmember Yates.
When it comes to this subject, if you want to get our opinions, just give us a call.
Okay.
You know,
16 policy.
Yeah, 69, as far as I'm concerned, that's an absolute no. Absolutely, it'll bankrupt the state. So
that's where I am personally, and I'm just wanted to run this by. Any others feel strongly about whether I should be getting direction from council or not getting direction from council, one way or another? I'm hearing a general, feeling of not wanting to deal with these statewide issues on a regular basis. So only
I said I did.
But I heard two who said they didn't. So if others would like to weigh in, I'm open to that.
I mean, there's only 3 here, right? So
yeah. But we've heard 2 members say they don't want to deal with these. 1 member who says they does. So I'm interested in hearing further feedback from other members.
I do want to deal with them, just not in my life.
I understand. So, and I think I heard that from Steve as well, that he does want to weigh in, but it's just not necessarily at this forum. Councilmember Martinez?
I think it would be good for us to just check in and touch base if you're going to represent us as a group one way or the other. Maybe if you feel one way and the rest of us feel another way, it might be good to at least have a check-in about that.
Agreed. And so what do you suggest? At this meeting or at a different forum, or what do you suggest?
I mean, ideally, I think it would be prior to, the last thing on the agenda, just reading it kind of thing.
Well, that's why I provided it in the packet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, didn't really know if we were going to all say something about it or...
Sure. And I tried to provide some roadmap and saying, hey, I'm going to bring this forward last week or 2 weeks ago or something. So again, your preference is to bring them forward in an informal or formal manner?
Either one is fine.
Okay, thank you.
One way to do this would be, and maybe the attorney can tell us, weighing in individually via sending an email saying this is what I think on this, this, and this, and to what extent can we do that?
Yeah, I don't see any problem.
Yeah, how about this? If individual members would email me their feelings on this, I'll try to take consensus of that and honor that consensus. How about that? Is that agreeable?
Whatever you, I'm like Ms. Barentine. We voted you to be the mayor. Be the mayor.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you for that, everyone. I appreciate you having that conversation. Moving on to City Manager's report.
I don't have anything this evening.
Thank you. City Attorney's report.
Nothing.
Excellent. And we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
What were you trying to tell me, Rick? What were you trying to tell me and I couldn't hear you?
Did you get 2 out of 8?
I don't remember. I wasn't listening. You weren't talking to me.
On the Cato.
Oh,
Okay, it must not have been too important.
I can send you both the, thank you.
Was it about the veterans?